In section 2 of Homo Deus, Harari talks about how Homo sapiens gives meaning to the world. And talks about what kind of a world did Homo sapiens create. We've already talked a little bit about objective and subjective reality, about algorithms, how they help survive survival problems and other problems. But the idea that we basically focused on was this whole idea of intersubjective realities. And we identified that they are also algorithms. But one of the things is that when you add the intersubjective realities to our capability to basically write stories, it means that our stories of the world are now something that can move from generation to generation, right? So these stories, fictions, and myths have a long life. And they don't need to be linked to the objective reality or even truth. They often are distorted by our dangerous and cruel nature, some of the things we talked about earlier. And even when recording the journey of the species, they often embody their own goals and their own evaluation criteria. So things like nations, corporations, human rights, gods, laws, liberty, equality, humanism, and money, we have to be careful because they actually maintain within themselves their own goals and their own evaluation criteria. So it's hard to lose or hard to critique something that also carries the own evaluation criteria within it. Talks about, let's look at the pre-modern world. In the pre-modern world, we had gods and the natural law. And within gods and the natural law, we had basically all of the different institutions, political, social, and economic institutions. But now let's look at what the modern deal is all about. The modern deal says, okay, let's take those same institutions, but basically the deal has two pieces to it. One is facts, and the other is about values. And the combination of facts and values, this is how we add meaning to the world. So this is the big point of how we add meaning to the world, is how we combine the facts and values. Facts we get from our sciences, values from our religion. Facts is about power, about how things have to happen. Religion is about order, about how we would like to see them happen. So the facts focus on what is, how the world is, and the values focus on how the world ought to be. These two are also kind of held together, if you will, by this idea of trust and interdependency. So trust is a big value inside of this whole theory. Then he looks at religion and he says, let's look at the three components of religion. Of a religious statement, it basically has ethical judgments inside of it. It has factual pieces, factual statements as part of it, and basically has the conflation of the basic ethical and factual, how they work together. This whole idea of having factual statements inside the religion is how you get this interdependency between the science side and the value side together. So let's look at a candidate that we might be able to look for a working religion. And one of the candidates is capitalism, is the economy and capitalism itself. And there are many people who really feel like that we should just let the invisible hand of the market kind of drive what we do. So let's look at the pros of that. It's delivered on growth. It's not zero sum. It integrates with science, and it has overcome famine, war, and plague. So that's some pretty strong pros. The cons, though, is that it discounts social equality, it discounts ecological harmony, and it discounts us honoring our parents, and basically it removes the stigma on greed and avarice. It cannot deliver meaning, and it weakens trust. So those last two are pretty much a killer, if you will, for that whole idea. He also warns us about this idea of the elite ark. And he says that we have to be careful that the elite are building a high-tech ark that they can function in while they destroy the rest of the world. And we have this world that is basically choking, and all the rest of us are living in this. And it's just a kind of a warning that he puts in the middle of this chapter. His next candidate for religion is humanism. And he talks about humanism. The pros are that it does deliver meaning, that it does deliver on trust. We trust ourselves, we trust our free will, we trust our feelings, and we trust our desires. The cons are that it basically doesn't stand alone. It's linked with both democracy and capitalism. It has multiple types, and which one is best, and it's weak on conflicts. Let's see why he thinks it delivers meaning. Right? And it talks about the fact that we have this subjective, if you will, we talked about subjective realities, and we have these subjective phenomena that exist in the world. And these subjective phenomena basically are how we develop a level of sensitivity. So we have these sensations, right, of our five sensations. But we have pleasure, we have heat, we have tension. And so the brain deals with each of these sensations. And as it's dealing with them, it actually generates some experience of love, fear, or anger. And to determine which one of those experiences it basically is going to select, if you will, based upon how it reacts to that, is how the whole idea of our sensitivity and our experience kind of work together. So what we have is we have these sensations that the brain takes. It has emotional responses. It then takes some thought about those emotional responses and based upon experience. And we have this back and forth that goes between sensitivity and experience. And that is what he calls how we generate knowledge and meaning. Now, as far as the humanism, what type is best, he talks about the fact that the types of humanism that he looks at, he basically says there's three. There's one is liberalism, which is where it focuses on the individual. The second one is socialistic humanism, which focuses on the collective. And the third is evolutionary humanism, which basically focuses on the improved individual. According to Harari, he feels that right now in today's world, the liberalism is the one that has basically won. Now, what does that mean? That means that basically if you looked at a chart of all the types of humanism, that there will be a broad consensus of agreement that liberalism is selected. However, it obviously doesn't mean that it's the only, because we see there are others, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the best. Because one of the warnings that Harari gives us about history itself is that, history has many different paths it could take, and the arrow of history is not aimed towards justice or fairness. So we don't know that it's necessarily the best solution. We just know that it is the broad consensus solution. The other thing is that currently it's the myth that is delivering meaning. So that's why we select that type of humanism, liberalism.